So, hello, listeners, viewers, and welcome to Lumix's four-part mini-series all about event marketing. We're going to kick things off today with all about the strategic role of events as part of your marketing strategy. We'll cover all sorts of things. We'll get into the nitty-gritty of ROI and measuring that in episodes to come. But I guess by means of introduction, I'm Lawrence. I'm from Lumix. We help global events teams find and manage suppliers all in one easy to use interface. But most importantly, we've got Mark joining us. So, Mark, I'll hand over to you for a quick intro.
Thanks, Lawrence. Hi, everyone. It's great to see you here today. I'm so proud to be involved with Lumix. This is a great new startup which is going to help you do event marketing in a better way going forward. I'm the CMO advisor to Lumix and have a long background in technology marketing in the B2B area and B2C area. Events have always been a key part of any marketing strategy and success that I've had. So I'm looking forward to the discussion today and hopefully providing some value to you about when and how to use events.
Hopefully, I think you're underserving yourself there. You work for the likes of Cisco, Adobe, so I'm sure you'll be full of some very useful insight, that's for sure.
Absolutely, yes. That background of IBM and Microsoft and Adobe and Cisco, many of the big brands of the tech world and events are key in that B2B space.
Indeed. All right then. Well, I guess I better start with probably why Lumix existing, why we're talking about events, why people might be intrigued in listening. Events are often seen as this, everyone talks about the digital world and all the channels involved there, but events are super important. So to open things off, why do you think events are worth talking about? Why do you think our listeners are going to be engaged in the conversation that we have?
Look, events are a key part of any marketing strategy. It's when the brand comes to life, it's that human connection with your customers or your potential customers. And it's so important to bring that to life. Of course, many of the things we work on today in marketing are digital, and that's vitally important. But still, events play a key role in that emotional connection with customers, that sense of building community and the attachment to the brand, not just in a head space, but in a heart space, is vitally important. And of course, events play a key role in demand generation, building pipeline, accelerating pipeline, and attracting new customers. So, all very important, but events need to be thought about strategically as part of an entire campaign strategy, which is where often people go wrong.
I agree with it's one of the only channels where you have any opportunity to build that relationship directly with the customer, right, in person. And
Yes.
I don't know whether you think, I read a lot about the post-COVID world. Do you get a sense that there was a before and after? Like, you feel that events suddenly became more important post-COVID?
I think there was before and after. I'm not sure they became more important post COVID. I think events have always been important. Let me give you a little bit of a story here. When I was at Cisco, and that was during the pandemic time, Cisco would always do live and online events. I would call them hybrid events, right? And I think that should be the strategy of events. You should never think of an event just as a physical event alone. You should think of it as online and physical. And the example of that was we were doing a Cisco Live in Melbourne, Australia. And when the pandemic hit, I had to cancel it. And it was a tough call, right? This was at the beginning of the pandemic. We had to cancel that live event. But I pivoted, and because we'd done online before, within 6 weeks, we delivered that event fully online. We had more people than ever before. Our engagement was actually higher, probably because people were still pleased to get out and at least interact digitally with people, given the pandemic was in its early stages. And we built really good pipelines. So we learned a lot, right? That we could actually achieve most of our marketing objectives online in a virtual world when we had to.
I guess that gave you an arsenal of new tools to translate into the back to normality in-person events. How do you then carry over the things that you learned from that digital side as well, right?
Yeah, I think what it taught us was every event is a hybrid event. You should always have online and you should always have live. And it also taught us to really appreciate the content that we were developing for the event, the live content you develop, and then how do you use that content going forward for social media marketing, for your overall marketing, because that content you developed is a great arsenal for the next 6 or 12 months, right? And often in the past, I think with just live events, people would do the event and they wouldn't even record the content very effectively and store the content, which is just a total waste, right? Because you spend a lot of money on these events, you may as well reuse the content in the digital world afterwards.
I definitely want to do some more digging on that front. But if we've established that events, be it online, virtually, or in person, or a hybrid of both, they're key to your marketing strategy. I want to put ourselves in the shoes of a marketer who owns a marketing budget, who's responsible for distributing and deciding much of that strategic element should be put into events. Maybe it's best framed as, I don't know, imagine you've got a £10 million marketing budget. Um, would you go about establishing how much to put into your events?
Really good question. From my Adobe days, we always got to the point we spent 70% of our marketing on digital, which I think is about the right figure. I would say my rule of thumb is 25% on live events or events, both hybrid, digital and live, and 75% on digital marketing, roughly that. I mean, you're spending more than 50% of your budget on events, that would worry me somewhat, right? Because you're just one part of the piece. They're really important, they're strategic, but they're not the total picture. So I would say roughly 25% of that, and 75% on digital. But I think the thing is, it's not just about the budget, it's what is the purpose of the event? So why are you running an event? Why should anyone care? The three rules I do when I'm thinking about an event are: what's the purpose? Why should anyone care? Okay. The audience, who are we bringing together?
Mm.
What's the experience? What are they going to talk about and what are they going to take away? And really, to be successful, you need to be able to educate, you need to be able to inform, and importantly, you need to be able to entertain. Okay? If it doesn't get you a great return after all that, why isn't that the case, right? That's the big question for marketers, because you don't do events just for the sake of doing an event. I often got frustrated when we'd run an event and people would say, oh, we got this many people to the event. Everyone feels really good after the fact. And I would say, okay, but how do we know it was successful? I get we had 5,000 people at the event, but how much new pipeline did we generate there? How much acceleration of existing pipeline did we create? So again, what are your metrics for success is also important.
Do you find that those metrics change, or do you adapt those metrics based on like the purpose, the objective of that event? For example, like I feel most people talk about events and using events as part of their marketing strategy. There's a bit of a bias towards of the funnel, as it were. Like, not I strictly think there is such clear like top or bottom, but for the sake of ease, um, sometimes marketers might forget about, actually events are a good opportunity for brand building or awareness as well. Like, how inkling do you have about how you change the measurement of success depending on the purpose of your event?
For me, the big benefits of running great events is customers about your latest offerings and building community and building that brand loyalty. So I don't believe, traditional waterfall, might be bottom of the funnel, etc. That waterfall's changed dramatically in recent times with the rise of digital. And so you've got to ensure that customers are in your journey, and how are you moving that customer forward to more consider your solutions, or to in fact purchase your solutions, or once they've purchased the solutions, how are you going to make sure they purchase again and build that loyalty in there? So I think the experience and building that sense of community and building that customer advocacy is probably more important than ever before, and that will drive better pipeline. Just trying to focus on this specific tactic for bottom of the funnel versus middle versus top.
Yeah. We'll probably dig more into this topic specifically in a later conversation that we have, but as a quick overview, you've mentioned a few times there, like pipeline. Do you have a quick takeaway on like sales and marketing teams should be working together, and how such metrics should be measured? Where should people be tracking this?
Oh, I do. The way we measured it, and probably the most successful company I've worked at for doing this is Adobe, the Adobe Digital Summit that we would hold in London and in Cisco and New York around the world. What we would do before that event, we would work out how much pipeline is represented at that digital via the attendees. Who are the
Hmm.
people in the audience doing that? And what are our objectives in terms of creating new pipeline and accelerating that existing pipeline? We would determine that between sales and marketing, okay, for that. And then we had this sophisticated appointment system where our customers could, and our salespeople could set up appointments with their customers. So we had this hub for our customers and sales and back-to-back meetings for our salespeople with all their customers throughout the thing. They'd have drinks, they'd have coffee, they'd experience the keynotes, but they'd have many, many meetings, thousands of meetings during that event. And then at the end of the event, we could say, we've increased our pipeline by 30% as a result of that event. Here's the deals that have been signed. And so this was jointly sales and marketing, and it's best practice of how this should work. It requires a lot of organization, but I tell you, the results are amazing. And it actually builds that partnership between marketing and sales, which is often missing in many companies.
Missing, or often there's a battle internally about who's
Yeah.
driving what or who's
Totally.
providing most value, we did all sorts of you know, integrations set up with your CRM, Salesforce, HubSpot, whatever. So you could establish, did someone attend an event? Yes or no? Okay, let's look at all the people that did and analyze the time between, meeting through to a contract being signed, and you could really get down to the nitty gritty of like how events were.
We could, absolutely. We use Salesforce together with the Adobe Marketing Suite, and we could actually become somewhat predictive in terms of our analytics based on if a customer behaved in this way, if they attended so many events, they were more likely to buy the product. Okay, so we were able to apply some of that methodology to different cells of customers and say, goodness, they haven't attended an event. We really have to get Lawrence to attend this next event because that's what they're missing in that predictive analytics sense.
Well, I'd love the investment in such tools. Yet to experience that level of insight, but maybe one. Okay, so a few bits then. Do you there's a kind of watch out? You mentioned earlier that worried if someone is spending more than 50% on their events. Um, one kind of first early signal that their event marketing strategy isn't working and they need to change something.
I had a really interesting experience when I was at Cisco because Cisco is very much a sales and engineering company and loves its events, right? And becoming a better marketing company, I would say. Not as good a marketing company as Adobe and Microsoft, for example. And what I found was in the Asia Pac region that I was running at that point in time, there was more than 52 events a year. And this was just Cisco events, right? So more than one event a week. And I looked at the whole schedule and I said, okay, which of these events are paying a return? And what I found was this: the Cisco events paid a much better return than the third party events. So all the sponsorships we were doing of third party events, etc., okay, but not as good as our Cisco Live and our Cisco Connect, etc. And so I pivoted the budget towards our own event. And then I said, okay, let's build a strategic calendar for the year. So we do one Cisco Live for Asia, right, which is a huge event, 10,000 people. Then we do a Cisco Connect in every country. And then we do these smaller Cisco Engage. So we define what is a Cisco Live, what is a Connect, what is an Engage, okay? Different events, different experiences, etc. And then I built a master calendar for the year. And I said to sales, here's what we're going to do. We're not going to do any other events. We're not going to sponsor anything else. Here's our strategic calendar for the year. And what was great about it was it allows us to integrate all of those events into our overall campaign strategy. It allowed us to be really prepared so we produce better events and a better experience for our customers. And we saved a lot of money because I think we went from more than 50 events a year down to 28, I think, or thereabouts. Okay,
Okay.
so you think about the time involved in events as well, right? Not just the money, but the time involved. Unless it's paying a return, why are you doing it, right? Or could you do less?
Broadly speaking, there, in your experience, you identified like non events weren't as valuable to use, like the that you had more control over.
That's right. And with control over the events, for example, one thing we always struggled with was customer testimonials or customer advocacy, because often it was hard to get customers to talk positively about Cisco technology publicly because, approval from their PR and their comms people. So what we did in each of those events, we have a customer testimonial booth, right? So we'd invite customers in an interview just like this, and we'd interview them. And
Mm.
Lawrence, as the CIO of a particular customer, and we'd get that testimonial and we'd have it in the can on video and content that we could use going forward. So those events became a customer reference and testimonial powerhouse to build that content for the next year, right? So we had our own objectives of the event rather than just informing and entertaining our customers. What did we want to get out of it from a content point of view?
That kind of brings nicely to something, I get a lot written about your pre, during and post event strategy. Like if you isolate an event to, there is to just bring in 5,000 attendees, then are you maximizing the value of what event can bring? So I'm wondering, you have like about content, you've talked about how there's certain things you measure. Do you have a quick cheat sheet or anything where should be thinking about this during an event and then post event, like what things people watch out for?
No, absolutely. First of all, it needs to be part of an overall marketing strategy, right? Your overall campaign strategy. What role do you have that event playing in that, right?
Mm.
Is it to excite the customer about a new technology? Is it to move them down the consideration path? Is it simply to build community? So in the pre, you've got to think about what is the purpose of this event and how are you going to make sure it's a world-class event in terms of the experience. You need to make sure you're attracting the right customers to that event and how much pipeline are you building. You need to make sure how you're going to measure success of this event. And you need to define that with sales before the event. The during is all about the experience, right? That you're exciting customers and you're excelling their expectations. Because the problem is there are so many events today and many of them are mediocre. You don't want your brand associated with a mediocre event, right? You want people to come away speaking about that event and saying that was one of the best I've ever been to. I had a lot of fun. I learned things about this technology I had no idea about. And they go away telling their friends about that. And of course, during the event, you need to measure, meeting those expectations of pipeline development. Post-event, of course, it's the thank you for coming and it's the follow-up, marketing follow-up of that pipeline to move it forward in a digital sense, right? Because an event is not a flash in the pan, it's part of an overall marketing strategy, all right? So all of those customers have to be followed up in the appropriate way. And what is the next event do you want to invite them to? Or what is the next sales call that needs to happen as a result of that?
I guess that's where part of your, entering the content or the testimonials you mentioned at the event did to then keep that audience
Yeah.
engaged. Did you do things like people that attended your event and then they were subject to seeing your brand on LinkedIn or whatever?
Absolutely. We did a lot of digital retargeting and we use often some of the best content from that event to retarget people and remind them of that in the event and why that's important to them.
Nice. I've got kind of one more. If we think back to the like strategic arm of this episode, again, the said about the costs of inflation in the last 5-10 years and the cost now involved in putting on an event. But I'm intrigued to like couple that with something you just mentioned, which was like a lot of mediocre events. Do you have the sense that it's become harder to find, top suppliers, build top quality experiences because costs are rising and the value for money is harder to obtain?
I think that's part of it. I think, the has been set higher than ever before. People want a concert-like experience at a B2B big event, right? Because making their experience as consumers and wanting brands and corporations to provide a similar experience. That's why there's always a party, with them as Rockstar at the end of those big IT B2B events. But I think you're right. The cost of delivering this sort of quality have risen dramatically. That's why I'm so excited about Lumix events, because you're leveraging all the experience of Marble and your sister companies in terms of those subcontractors, right? In order to provide really good value for your clients, roughly than they would spend themselves, a better experience because they're top class suppliers. And importantly, Lawrence, as I think we've spoken about, the whole management of compliance as well, because I feel bad that people who I know in corporations have been let go because of prepaying for events and not following accounting guidelines, right? Which is often really difficult because when you're building an event long term, it often goes across quarterly boundaries. And I've seen people be let go, not through any sort of malintent, but just trying to get the job done. So that compliance side of things is really important to work with finance. And again, I think Lumix has a great solution to that customers. So great experience, lower costs than ever before, and managing compliance is pretty good.
Nice. Well, I think we've covered most of our topics there. Any key final takeaways that we've talked
Sure.
about?
I think, look, events are a key part of the marketing mix and will continue to be. Always make sure your event is hybrid, both live and online. Make sure you're capturing that content in order for use, not just the event in the future. Partner with sales to leverage the event to develop pipeline and accelerate pipeline because then they'll be your biggest advocate, right?
Mhm.
And you don't want marketing and sales to be competing with each other and such and blaming each other. That's a nightmare scenario, and I hate that. You got to work as a team to get things done. And then look for suppliers like Lumix to help you do it at a lower cost and provide a better experience.
And that summarizes it nicely. Well, thanks for the chat, Mark. We've got a lot more to talk about, so I'll see you in the next episode.
Thanks, Lawrence. Look forward to the next episode. Bye.